Hey everyone, this is Disc Junkie, and welcome back to the MANCAVE of Madness. Now today I have a really unique video for you guys, and I know I say that basically in every opening, but trust me, this time it is definitely true, because I'm going to step out of my creative bubble. I'm going to do stuff which I never really imagined I would be doing. And the thing is that I'm a really big fan of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre from 1974, and most of you probably know this if you follow my channel. And you'll know that I'm obviously standing in my so-called TCM room, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre room, which houses my Texas Chainsaw Massacre collection. You can see one big bookshelf here behind me, and there's also another one in the opposite side of the room. But this room has been like a cornerstone of my collection for quite a long time. I essentially saw the film around 2008, 2010, so I didn't really grow up with it, but it completely changed the way I view horror movies. And since that day, I have essentially just fallen in love with the film, and I've started collecting it to an extreme, to say the least. And I currently own around 310 copies of the film on all kinds of formats from all over the world. And one of the things that I've been considering for quite a while now is that I think it would be really cool to do something extra and unique for the room where I house my TCM collection. And I mean, now I've moved over to a new house, and I realized that, now I actually have the possibility to have the small room, which is basically only my Texas Chainsaw collection in these two big bookshelves. And then I figured, wouldn't it be cool to do something more with this room? To actually take the creativity and the feeling of Texas Chainsaw into another level. And so that is what we're doing today. I'm actually going to redesign this room and remake it into something that I feel should be inspired and very close to what a room in the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre house might have looked like. So we are going to take inspiration from the Sawyer family home, and I'm going to try to make this room look like something that might actually exist in the movie universe. So that's what we're doing today. But before we kick off our usual time-lapse sequence, let's go ahead and take a brief look at what the room looked like in the previous video. So first we come to this sort of upper hallway, I suppose. There's also a bunch of these sort of moose horns, and I'm not really sure. I'm feeling kind of iffy about this, but I might actually keep these, try to make some sort of Texas Chainsaw Massacre wall for them. We got a small room here, which I suppose we could dub the green room because it's very green in feel. Here's basically just a quick look at what the room looked like before I started making my rebuild. I basically put up these 3 Billy bookcases. You can also tell that I got some Benno sort of pillars here in the corner, or CD towers. This room is very much in the making, not really sure where I'm going. And so now that we've cleared that out of the way, let's kick it off into madness mode.
Where the hell are we?
You in my house, motherfucker!
Can we go now?
We're not through yet.
Right, so now that the time lapse is over, I think it's high time that we actually check out this room in detail. And as you can see behind me, we have the posters which I've set up, and I did have these in my man cave previously, but they weren't really in the Texas Chainsaw Massacre room, which I think is nice that I can actually do this now. And I know this video has already been playing for 7.5 minutes, but now I can finally show you the extent of the madness. So this is the project which you just saw in the video, which I've been working on. This is the Texas Chainsaw Massacre wall, or whatever you want to call it. And the first thing I did, which you saw in the video, was to build this wooden frame, which is meant to be inspired by the classic scene in the movie where you have Leatherface hanging a woman on a meat hook. And I've also actually made my own meat hooks like you saw in the video, and I'm really happy with the way this turned out. I essentially used a metal rod which I found in the garage, and then I bent this into shape, and then I basically grinded this down and got it into a shape and a size and a quality which I felt was fairly close to the originals in the film. So I made 2 of those and hung them on hooks, which was also this interesting little piece which I found in the garage, which isn't really a hook, but it really works well, very sort of heavy duty. So yeah, drilled some holes, put those up, and then I started decorating this. For one thing, over here we have a actual chainsaw blade, an extra one which I just hung up, stuff I found in the garage. And then I started decorating the wall. For one thing, I'm using these actual sort of antlers and deer heads, which actually came with the house. You know, I'm not generally a collector of that stuff, but when I had it, I figured this would actually be cool to use as part of a design project for my Texas Chainsaw room, so I wanted to keep them. And then in the middle, obviously, we have the big moose head, which also came with the house. And this is actually a really, really beautiful set of horns or antlers. And I essentially ended up mounting this on a metallic sort of bracket, because I realized that this is so heavy. You can't believe how heavy this is. And I was essentially just not sure if the wall could take it. So I was sort of fearing that this big moose head would essentially break the wall if you sort of brushed up against it and accidentally just fell down. I didn't want to do that. So I made sure to mount this, basically hanging it on that metal bracket and then sort of securing it with a couple of extra bolts. You know, I would have wanted to hide these, but it was really hard to mount the head like this because, yeah, it is, if you haven't felt a head like this, it is actually a weight to be reckoned with. But I'm really happy with the result, even though this is essentially a little bit too big for this room. But at the same time, I really want to use it because this was the biggest and most beautiful one that I had. I basically got like 7 or 8 of them when we purchased the house, but I sold most of them. But I wanted to keep this one because it was definitely the one that was in best shape, the largest horns, and yeah, I just thought it looked really cool and very sort of powerful image. But looking at the other stuff, we do have these smaller horns, which I mentioned. And then I actually made some of these little custom frames. I essentially found these old metal frames when I was cleaning out my mother's apartment. They're just really simple, and then I essentially just went to Google and I Googled for like behind the scenes photos from the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre film and printed them out on sort of semi-glossy paper. Here's just a variation underneath, which I decided not to use. So that way I got these odd photos which aren't really in the movie, but they still feel like they could be actual photos that the family took, because I wanted to create a room which felt like it was a room that could exist in the Texas Chainsaw Massacre universe within the Sawyer family house. I suppose I could have done more with this, maybe sort of dirty them up a bit or add filters or whatever, and I might do that in the future. But for now, I just felt that I wanted to create something presentable, so I just used these pictures the way they are. There's the first one, classic Texas Chainsaw Massacre family photo at the porch there. Then I went with a bit outside of the universe. Up here I have a smaller frame, which is actually a classic picture of Tobe Hooper himself sitting in one of the upstairs rooms in the house. So yeah, I know this is moving a little bit out of the realm of what would be reasonable, but at the same time, it could be a family photo. I mean, just of a random person, so I think it fits in here. And I just like the fact of, you know, trying to do my own thing. And I'm sure, you know, this is all about sort of creating the rules of my space, what I want in this room. I mean, I know this room is so out there in terms of what people would consider normal or doable or acceptable in regular society. But this is my man cave, and I can do whatever the fuck I want in here. And I wanted to build this bizarre room which didn't look like anything that anyone had ever seen, and I just wanted to celebrate my fascination with this really cool horror movie from 1970s. And so in the center here, I decided to go with some smaller meat hooks, which I hung, just putting some simple little hooks in there to hang them. And then I placed a centerpiece, which is this vintage photo of Leatherface, very sort of classic pose. And this is also obviously printed, so the quality isn't super good. I mean, it's a bit grainy, but I think it works. I mean, you just see it from afar, and it's a photo, so usually, you know, photos might not be super high quality in this print fashion, but yeah, I really do like the way this turned out. I thought it was a really cool idea. And I might add other photos if I find frames that I think are fitting, that look vintage enough. But this is all that I got so far. And there's another small picture of Leatherface, a very much more unusual picture, which I just stumbled over on Google, which I hadn't really seen before. But this is obviously the lady variation, where he has the lady mask on and the wig. Then we got some more antlers down here, another meat hook obviously. And then down here I went with another portrait, which is actually of Chop Top from the second film. And I'm not a super huge fan of the second film, but I wanted to incorporate a bunch of stuff from the franchise, and I thought that this was such a nice sort of behind the scenes photo, which felt very much like a family photo in a sense. I felt like it could be an actual portrait that the family would have in their home, so I really wanted to include that. And I figured it's very easy to replace these. I just print new ones and cut them out to right size and pop them in there in case I want some variation. Looking at the side here, I actually hung a machete, which I know isn't exactly Texas Chainsaw Massacre themed, but I just decided to go all out with this room and just take my inspiration from the Texas Chainsaw Massacre rather than being so inaccurate. Because, I mean, if you know the movie, you know that they don't have any moose heads, especially they would have American stuff like bull horns and things like that. But the whole theme of using heads and craniums and skeletal pieces as part of decoration is very much alive in this room. So I also felt that, yeah, I can include a machete, and this is something I've had in my possession for many, many years. It was originally purchased in the Dominican Republic when I was a kid. I received this as a gift and was really begging to get a real machete, and essentially I got it. And I did some modifications for this. It's very old and rusty now, but I did add like a little bit of metal bracket and just hung it very crudely on this hook right here. So yeah, I just tried to make it look like something that might exist in the Texas Chainsaw Massacre house. And then below it, we do have a bunch of stuff on these shelves, which I want to talk about. And right here is one of the large figures, which I believe is an 18-inch, if I'm not mistaken. And this is something I actually got for free. And I really don't want to get into the story because it's a really long story. But essentially, I bought this through Facebook. The guy shipped me this without any kind of safe packaging, no sort of bubble wrap or anything. And essentially, yeah, it was obviously broken when I got it. And then, long story short, I ended up posting about this on Facebook, and it got back to me that the guy had actually tried to screw me over because he actually knew that the figure was damaged before he shipped it, and he was hoping that I wouldn't notice and that he would just blame it on the postal office and try to get off selling a figure which was broken. But in the end, you know, it's basically a saw that's broken and it's got some cracks in it, but it still looks really good as a display piece. So I was really happy to be able to add this to my collection, and ended up being free because the guy was a douchebag. And yeah, let's just drop it. Then we got some other stuff in here. We got these big boxes from Germany, which are really nice. And we got some homemade lamps in the corner. Not essentially Texas Chainsaw themed, but I did use these IKEA lamps and basically plastered them with these old actual film cells. This is actually from the Alien franchise. But I just really think that the idea of these homemade lamps with film shits on them is very much part of what Leatherface does. You know, you take used objects or objects that weren't meant for this purpose and turn them into something different. Even though they use bones and stuff for decoration, I figured that this was borderlining the trashy side, and to some extent I feel that it works in here. But yeah, so I essentially made two of those. I got one on each side, and looking at the rest of the items here, I know I'm getting very much sort of off track here because it's so fun to talk about this. But then I've just basically laid out a bunch of knickknacks which I feel are fitting to the movie. For one thing, we got these promotional photos, or well, they're actually photos from the Jessica Biel movie. This was something that was included in the, I believe it's this one. Yeah, this is the American remake release from New Line Platinum, and this actually comes with these crime scene photos. So I decided to incorporate those because I really do like that movie as well. So here we got a picture of Leatherface and some other crime scene photos from the envelope that came with that particular release. So just spread those out. Here's actually a vintage photo of me when I was a kid. So yeah, everything is very much in style of, you know, me sort of expanding the universe or trying to create a mood rather than being screen accurate. Then we got a small figure from the Movie Maniacs. It's actually right here. This is the little Movie Maniacs poster stand thing. Then we got some other little photos there. Crime scene photos from the New Line Platinum version. This is something I found recently. This is apparently some sort of poultry cutting knife, as far as I know. I got this secondhand. I know it's very much a sort of new shiny object, and with that standard might not fit in here, but I thought that it actually fitted the theme. I imagine that the Texas Chainsaw Massacre family would have stuff like this, especially for Leatherface when he's cutting through skin. This felt like a very sort of fitting thing. And then to the left here we have the German/Austrian release, which is the bizarre sort of fold out, not very beautiful, actually a bit of an ugly design if you ask me, but I don't have anywhere to put this, so I figured it would be nice to sort of give it a center display. Then we get to some more photos from the same source as the other ones, and here is actually a promotional photo which comes from a Texas Chainsaw Massacre press kit for the remake with Jessica Biel. And as you can see, here we have a picture of Leatherface as a kid, bit of damage, some sort of blisters on his face. So I always thought that this particular picture was really beautiful and interesting look. Then I did place some hammers. These are vintage style hammers or sledgehammers that I found in the garage. There's one over here which I didn't mention, but this is a bit more of a heavy duty one. So yeah, these are actual hammers, really heavy, solid. I think they are essentially a bit smaller than the one that Leatherface would have, but at the same time, I don't know, I think it fits the theme really well, so to speak. Then we got a really cool custom VHS with a skin case. This is something one of my followers or friends did. His name is Tyler. Then we have a Living Dead dolls, as well as the box behind it. We have a large German DVD box there, or Blu-ray box. And we have the other lamp here on the side. The horror screamers. And here's a press kit bag, which is also where I sourced the photo which I mentioned there of Leatherface at a young age. So let's get that back there. Oh, and then obviously we have the custom built TV bench. And this was something, you know, I was never planning to have a TV in this room, but when I was moving stuff around and I didn't know where to put this TV, because this is a TV which was essentially left in the house by the previous sellers. And I didn't know what to do with this. I felt like, oh, it's a nice big TV, but I don't have any space for it in any room. It's just too big to fit in anywhere. And then I was moving it around, and I basically had it sitting at this wall and felt like, you know, this wall is a very sort of untapped potential, which can't be used for anything because it's a bit too shallow to use for shelves. You know, Billy book shelves are basically too deep to fit in here because they would go too far as the window and the door frame there. So then I realized that, you know, I could actually build a small TV shelf in here, basically like a TV table, because if you build a lower table like this, then the depth of a Billy bookshelf might actually work. You can see that this does run actually all the way out here towards the door frame, and if you would have a full-size shelf floor to ceiling here, this would look really odd. But when you just have a lower style shelf, sort of a bench like this for the TV, then it actually works in my opinion. So basically what I did is that I took 3 of these small shelves, which I built using just leftover pieces. I essentially had some of these Billy bookcases, so I cut those down and made these 3 custom shelves, which are essentially bottom pieces of Billy bookcases. You can see that there's no shelf at the top. So then I just went to the local lumber yard and I purchased a really long board like this, which looks like basically the Billy standard, even though it's not. So this is just one long board at the top. So this isn't actually connected, it's just laying on top of the rest of the shelves. And then here I obviously have my DVDs and Blu-ray players. I got a VCR over there. And then I have some other box sets here, which are part of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre theme, but not essentially the original movie. So here we have my Texas Chainsaw Massacre porn spoofs, very small section, but they do exist. And then we have my Black Maria trucking box set, which is essentially a box set with a t-shirt. And this is from Fright Rags, I believe. And then we have another Fright Rags boxes up here, newer variation. So I just placed those there because they sort of fitted the size. And then over here, obviously, some other movies and books from the franchise, but they're not actually the original film, so to speak. The little boxes there on the side don't have any real purpose. I essentially got these in the house as well. Just looked like these old vintage wooden boxes, which I felt would fit the theme. So yeah, here I just have some random movies which I haven't watched, sort of new pickups, and then just some remotes. And with that, I think we can move over to the window right here. This is also a sort of bit of a display area, which I had some struggling with. I'm not really sure if I'm happy with the end result. I think that it could be better, but I think that it works. So basically, I just used the window pane here, what you would call it, as a display area. I found a vintage chainsaw in the garage, so this is also something that came with the house. It is an old Husqvarna model. I forget the model number, but it doesn't have any sort of screen accuracy to it. I just picked it up because it was a really old looking saw and I didn't have a use for it, so I thought it was really cool just incorporate it, because you know, you have to have a chainsaw in this room. It wouldn't be complete. And I would obviously like to replace this with a real screen accurate saw from the films, but for now it's a substitute that I think works and actually looks really damn cool. Then we got some other stuff here which isn't all Texas Chainsaw, but I felt that it fits. So here is a glass jar with this little alien fetus thing. And I know you're thinking like, this has nothing to do with Texas Chainsaw, and I know, but I also feel that, you know, in a Texas Chainsaw home, you would find jars like this with sort of like unborn babies or whatever, or just eyes or body parts or whatever. So I think it fits. It's creepy and it just looks really cool. I like it. I think it's definitely fitting for the Man Cave of Madness in the Texas Chainsaw room. So I'm happy with it, and it doesn't really matter if you think it's blasphemous to include an alien fetus in the Texas Chainsaw Massacre room, because that's just your opinion, man. And then we got a small Lego set, which my friend Stefan built for me. So this is a product of his own mind. It's not something you can purchase. So it's a really sweet little presentation. We got an Epsom salt can, which was part of the promotional material for the Jessica Biel movie. Then we got the saw here in the corner. We got a little Texas Chainsaw Massacre diorama. There you also have the wall in the background with all the heads. I know this is a red wall, but this was obviously also part of what inspired me to create the wall with the various craniums on it. I was thinking at some point maybe I should paint this red, but I also wanted to limit the project because it felt like it became a really big project as it was. And I also really like the fact that this room has a green theme. It has really old vintage green floor, and I also felt like, you know, I want to maintain this as a green room and not turn it into a red room, because I felt like I already have a room which has a red floor, and so I just decided that, okay, this is going to be a room with green tones and nothing else. Plus, I mean, the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre saw in the movie the Poulan 245A or 306A with the 245A gas cover or whatever. You know it. I mean, don't argue with me about saws. I know what the fuck I'm talking about. That saw is obviously a light green, which actually means that it would really fit the tones of this room when I eventually get one. Then in the window here, we do have a small sort of classic bird cage kind of thing, which is also very much in style with the movie. This is very much typical stuff that the Sawyer family has hanging around as sort of decorations in their house. And I also have a very cheap looking skull. I'll agree, but this was something I had. I want to get like a human skull replica, definitely. I think that definitely needs to be in this room in some aspect, but for now this is what I had, so just using that. Here is also a really creepy vintage doll, which has like this twistable three-faced head, which I like. This was a flea market find, but I definitely feel that it fits the theme of the room. Very much a serial killer type toy, if you ask me. Then we have a vintage rusted chain, which I hung up here. This was also obviously from the house, found in the garage. As well as an additional chain, a bit newer. And then we have a bear trap, which people might be a bit confused about as to why would I have this. But once again, this is also something which feels like it could fit the theme or could fit the idea of the Sawyer household. I figured they would display stuff like this. But this bear trap is actually not a real bear trap. This is actually a fake one. These spikes here are actually rubber foam. And this is because that this is actually a screen use prop from a film called The Collector, which I'm sure people might be aware of. I thought it was a really cool movie, and I bought this screen used hero prop from a classic scene where they have a bunch of these bear traps which essentially kill off a person. And I got this on eBay maybe before the movie was sort of a hit, and I forget what I paid, but I haven't really found a place for this until now. And then I felt like, you know, this would fit the idea of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre home, I think. And with that, I thought, why not the hell add it there? And then there's also a mask up here, which also doesn't have anything to do with it. But I do branch out like this. I felt like maybe it's not always gonna be a Texas Chainsaw Massacre 100% kind of room, but it will also be like a, you know, generic serial killer type room with masks or animal heads or whatnot. So yeah, I guess you get the idea. And yeah, then we have a red lamp here, which also, I know I said I shouldn't have red in here, but this was a lamp that I had, and Obviously there's a red chair, so vintage theater chair, which I'm also thinking I might replace for something else. Maybe get like a small green sofa, something more vintage looking. And if we're gonna take a look at the collection here in the first shelf, we basically have everything sorted in alphabetical order, but it's sorted based on countries. So for the first shelf, I have all of my American stuff. Then we move over to Australia and so on in alphabetical order to go through all the countries. Because yeah, I got so many copies of this in so many various formats and various sources all around the globe that it's becoming a problematic situation to keep these organized and trying to understand what I have and not whenever I stumble upon a new edition, which I think I might not own. But I've basically done 2 shelves for each country, and this is a very simple reason for it, is because when you put a Billy bookshelf up like this, you can't really fit in VHS size shelves so many times. You know, some of these videotapes are fairly large, like these ones from Australia, and then you need a specific height for that. But if you were to use this height for every shelf, you could obviously stack, you know, whatever you wanted in this, but then you would run out of space real quick because, you know, some of these boards, like the middle one here, this is a fixed board which you can't move. The other ones move around, but this means that you can't actually fit in 4 movie shelves. You can see here at the top, I can't fit this in. So what I usually do is I tend to basically go every other shelf. So every other shelf is a big shelf and every other shelf is a small shelf. And in order for this to work for this particular type of organizing, I just used 2 shelves for each country. So I would have American versions, and then I can just mix and match using the big shelf for the tapes or box sets that are big, and using the small shelf for the smaller box sets. And that way it's very easy to sort of fit everything in, and you don't sort of end up in the situation where you go, oh, this tape is too big for this shelf. That's typical. Now I have to place that somewhere else. So here I can actually keep things in a consistency. So here we go. This is all of the American versions. Then I got some American Betacam Masters from Elite Entertainment. And a lot of this stuff is stuff I've talked about in various videos. So I'm not going to go into super detail as to each individual release. I want to just give you a bit of an overview as to everything that I have. So moving over, we have the next 2 shelves, which has Australia. And then I've actually used some of these little Billy, or actually not Billy, these are from the Benno or Gnedby CD towers, which you can get at IKEA. And these are just individual shelves which I had laying around, had a bunch of these, and I realized that I actually could use these as shelf dividers. I know they're not sort of high-end or whatever, but they work. I just wanted something to be able to create a divider, and I would like to get something more luxurious, maybe something more TCM themed, a really cool divider. So if you have any ideas for how I could divide my various countries, various sections, do let me know in the comments, because that would be really cool, get some inspiration for this. But for now, I'm just using these little leftover shelves here. So we got Australia, then we move over to Austrian releases, then we got one from Bosnia, and then we got the Brazil versions. And so it's not always 100% matchable, because here I have like one version from Argentina, so obviously there's nothing from Argentina above, but yeah, you get the idea. At least it's somewhat. If I want to get something from Austria, I just go to this section where I know I will have Austria either above or below, and then I have the Austrian editions here, the Austrian editions there, so it's fairly close. And yeah, you can sort of mix and match and try to level things out. So I think it's a fairly working system. Then we got the Brazil versions, like I said. And then I do have some knickknacks like this, like little figures, or here's a little playing card set. And yeah, I tried to display stuff, but I haven't really gone to too much effort into sort of these little knickknacks. They basically stuff I just threw in there because it felt like it was a bit empty. And then if we move down, we do have the Canadian releases there and there. Then we have Chinese releases. Then we come to Denmark. And next up is Finland, very small section of Finnish releases. Then we get to the French versions, there and there. And then downstairs we get to Germany, which is a really big section. Goes all the way to this separator here. And then we have German there as well on the bottom row. And as you can tell, I mean, I guess you know this, but this is everything from videotapes to Super 8s to DVDs, Blu-rays, basically anything you got in here. Moving over from Germany, we got some stuff from Greece. We have the Italian versions coming up here as well as below. And that is it for the first shelf. So we just move over to the other side. We can briefly look at the top here. So first up we got Japanese editions, and then we get to Korean versions, just a few of those. And then we have Lebanese editions. I got a couple of those. And let's see, then we got Mexican versions, we got stuff from the Netherlands, and then right up there we have some stuff from Norway. So not sure how much of a close-up you wanted all these, because I mean, I usually try to do one of these videos every couple of years to just show you whatever new stuff I got. So this is going to be a bit of an overview, but I'm not really going to talk about the individual editions, as you can obviously get by this point in the video. So then we have some stuff from Portugal, and then we have just one release from Russia. We move over to Spanish editions, and then we get to Swedish releases right here, as well as up here. Below that we get to United Kingdom, which is also a very large section. It basically runs all the way here. So this is all UK versions, as well as UK versions underneath. There's a couple from South Africa. And yeah, so UK runs all the way over here. Then we get some Thailand editions, as well as a couple variations from Turkey. And right down here, that's all UK. And then at the bottom here, we get to some bootleg editions, just 2 rows of that, and that is basically it for all of the 2 bookshelves. But I think I've gone through everything in the room, and if not, then I apologize. You can obviously ask if you have some thoughts about anything in here that I haven't talked about, but yeah. And so that is basically it for this video. I had so much fun doing this project, and it turned out so much cooler than I ever expected. I'm just so excited that I, took a chance and took a leap into doing something which I felt was really, really scary. I mean, I've never really done a project like this before, and I felt that, I wasn't really sure where this would land. It might have landed in complete disaster, where I would feel like, okay, this is so stupid. I'm basically turning into a serial killer myself, where it feels like people would walk into this room and just be like, okay, I'm just slowly backing out of here. But I don't know, I don't think we're quite there yet. I think that this actually serves as something really, really unique, a really, really cool interior design experience. So I'm just super stoked about actually putting this together. But that's it from me. I want to say thank you very much for watching, and as usual, hope to see you all next time.